Hello, survivors. Welcome to the State of Decay 2 stream. I'm your host, Geoffrey Card, and at our big end of the year wrap up at the end of 2021, I got a lot of questions about what we're doing next. Are we going to be still supporting State of Decay 2 in 2022, or was that big end of the year wrap up the end of our story? Well, the answer is a resounding yes to the question about whether we're continuing in 2022. We're still making stuff. We're still making lots of new stuff. We've got multiple updates that are cooking right now, and we are here to show you what one of them is about to be. It's a work in progress, but we're about to send it to the public test realm, and so we want to introduce you all to what we're trying to accomplish, get your feedback on it, and basically sort of let you all know that it's time to check out the public test realm again and see what is cooking. So, here to help explain what is going on are a couple of our favorite guests, starting with Eric Anderson. Hello, Eric. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. It's good to be back.
So Eric has been a leader on this team for years. Last year, it was his team that delivered the Plague Territory and Outpost update, and today he's here with a fancy new title. He's our Associate Product Director, which basically means he's still a leader on the team. He's just higher up the chain, and so more of our creative decisions, more of our logistical decisions are going to be passing through Eric, and I couldn't be more thrilled. He's really, really sort of earned this level of trust that we've given to him. And so, yeah, happy to have you here and happy to brag on you a little bit to the audience.
Well, thank you, Geoffrey. I appreciate it.
And also joining him here is Larry Wu. Larry Wu is a systems designer on Eric's team. He's the one who brought us the loot in Trumbull Valley, the new distribution of Plague Hearts with the Plague Territory update. He's done a bunch of stuff for this team already, and he's here to talk about some new stuff that's coming down the pipe. Hello, Larry.
Hi, everyone. Always honored to be on the stream.
So in addition to these two, I've also got something else to share, which is that we're doing a giveaway on the stream today. I'm probably not going to be flogging this as often as I often do, because we're going to get into a discussion and I'm going to forget. But the moderators are going to be talking about this in the chat, so make sure that you're aware. If you type !enter into the chat, you'll be entered to win several of these placemats and coasters that we're going to be giving out to people. You might remember that last year when the Homecoming update came out, a bunch of our YouTube and Twitch creators ended up with these. They were showing these off on their channels because we sent them to a bunch of folks that have been helping us, sort of promote and help people understand this game. But we had some leftovers, and so we want to give these out to folks in our chat. So definitely enter if you want to win these. These are basically like if you actually lived in the world of State of Decay, these are items you could get at the Fork in the Road Diner at Trumbull Valley. Megan made them. They're really gorgeous, and so I'm really excited about them, so I want people to be able to get them. So, but one thing you got to do is if you hit !enter, you got to stick around through the whole stream and find out if you won. Because if you just disappear, then that's a prize out the window we don't get to give to anybody, and that's just disappointing for us all. So stick around, and hopefully several of you are going to get to win these as the show progresses. Anyway, what are we doing? Oh, that's right. Let me, I'm paused here. The game doesn't look as good when it's paused. I gotta make it look pretty. Here we go. So, to start off, let's talk about the problem that Eric and Larry's team set out to solve. Infestations. What is wrong with them? You guys want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think there's a few different there's a few issues we kind of want to address, I think, with infestations and also sieges. But I think one of the big ones is that infestations, I mean, State of Decay is kind of a very simulation driven game. It's a lot of systems interacting, and it's about like the simulation and how the player can push on the simulation to kind of get what they want. And infestations are kind of one of those systems that's kind of isolated from the simulation and kind of lives on its own and does its own thing, and the player has very little agency over them. So one of the things we wanted to do is bring them into the fold of the rest of the simulation and kind of tie it into all the other systems, so that the player has more like levers, more points where they can push on the simulation and have it affect infestations or vice versa.
Yeah.
So and the same with sieges. The same with sieges. Sieges kind of live on their own. They're kind of like both infestations and sieges. They kind of run on a timer, and
Yeah.
there's not really anything that like affects them that you can really play with or anything like that. So they just kind of live in their own vacuums, and just the player doesn't really have much agency over how they work. So that was one of the big things is you just felt out of place with the rest of the game being so tied together, all the systems being so tied together. We wanted to bring them, just integrate them better into the simulation. Was one of the big things.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that my experience as a player, I play this our game a lot on my personal stream, and basically my pattern was, I'll get a bunch of infestations built up on my map. I'll spend one session clearing them all out, and then I'll just sort of wait. And then over time, a bunch more will pop up, and I'll clear them out. And it just feels a little bit like a chore, right? It just feels like it's this whack-a-mole thing that it pops up and you kill it. It pops up, you kill
It's
it.
so random and on a. I mean, because it is. I mean, it's on a it's a random and it's on a timer essentially. So it's just like has the time expired. So it's not easy to like really, you don't understand what it's doing because it doesn't have a lot of logic to it other than just random timer, which doesn't seem like a living organism.
And even as a developer who actually like, there is some logic under the behind the scenes with infestations, and I even know what it is, and I still can't tell that it's happening as a player. Like, because there's parts of it where it's like, there are rules to how they spread and how they propagate from one site to another, but we don't surface that. So like even if we just improve the communication around the feature, that would be a big
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. I mean, because there is a little bit of simulation with the infestations, the way they, like you mentioned, with the way they spread. Like currently, when an infestation exists and it's going to spread to a new infestation, it sends out a horde that actually travels to another site, and then when the horde reaches that site, it infests it. That's not really messaged in the game at all right now.
You can't tell it's happening at all. Yeah.
Yeah, you if you're watching the map closely, you could see the horde leave an infestation and then go to another map, and then you could see that when it gets to the site, it will turn into one. But it's not very clear. It's not messaged very clearly. It's not brought to the player's attention. So I think that was the first thing we were looking. It's making sure we're clearly communicating how they already work, like what is happening currently. So like making sure it's clear what hordes are, what hordes are going to create new infestations when they're being sent out. Making sure that stuff that we already have in there is actually messaged clearly to the player, because they can't play with it if they don't know what's happening.
And then on top of that, what you were saying before, also just making the simulation itself more interesting, more compelling, more tied into other things that the player is worried about. And then Larry, were you starting to say something a second ago?
I was going to tell like the origin story that Brian G always told me about infestations is that like they were originally intended to give that like mid-game threat that Plague Hearts ended up taking over for in like SCD2, and so
they do kind of feel like Legacy, don't they? Yeah,
but they were like left in the game and like with their original functionality, and so they don't really like have a place that's like integrated into the core loop of the rest of the gameplay. So it's nice to have a chance to bring it into the fold.
I mean, just as like a little transparent, like it was one of the earlier systems I think we had in the game, way before Plague Hearts, when we were developing, and then we developed Plague Hearts, and it was just one of those things where we never went back and looked at infestations after the fact. After we finished and made all these other changes with the game, we never kind of looked back and be like, okay, now where's infestations fit in? So it's just they did kind of get left behind.
A lot of players have intuited that it feels like Plague Hearts infestation should be related to each other. We've actually gotten a lot of feedback and suggestions from players wanting infestations to somehow be related to Plague Hearts, and so far we haven't delivered that to them. So
that's another good point, is that like narratively, like they don't. Like there's a lot of intuition, I think, that players and people would have about, okay, what you think an infestation would be and how you think it would behave within this world, and it doesn't behave that way currently in the game. So I think that's another thing we wanted to do, is try to integrate it more within what your intuition would be about how you would think that they would function and how they would connect with other systems.
So we've talked about the fact that we need to communicate better what infestations are already doing. We need to tie them better into the simulation and into player expectations for how this enemy should be operating. And I think there's a third thing, is the consequences of them need to feel more meaningful. Because right now the consequences of having a lot of infestations is partly you have bigger fights at those sites that are infested, but they're kind of fun fights. That's not really a big deal. It's mostly morale. It's mostly the fact that, when you have a bunch of infestations on the map, your people start complaining about it. That's the main motivation we give you to try to kill infestations, and it doesn't feel like a very satisfying consequence. It's just people
Yeah.
are sad. Doesn't feel like that's what should be
Again,
the consequence for infestations, right?
yeah, well, because I mean, if you consider it from the perspective of the characters within that world, they're worried about the infestations, they're complaining to you, and their morale's low because of infestations, but they don't have a good reason to complain about. Like, there's nothing. They don't do anything.
Yeah,
In
they're
the
no
you know
threat.
the
So why is everyone so whiny?
in the narrative of the world currently, they don't really do anything. So there's no reason for the characters to really be that worried about them. So trying to make it make more sense, give them mechanics that make sense, like have more consequences that the infestations do more, and then it then makes more sense then when the characters are worried about them.
Yeah.
Um, so
Okay, yeah.
that was another thing.
So we've got some goals here. So we want to do better communication, particularly on the map screen, about what infestations are, how they work, and what they're doing. We want to make them work in a more interesting way, so they feel like they're tied into sort of the behavior of the enemy that you're facing, and we want them to feel like they've got consequences that actually matter to the survival of your community. So in our next segment, we're going to talk about exactly what we're going to do about all of these problems.
Yes.
So let me switch into our fuller game view here, and let me switch to the map. All right, so this is a community that I have set up specifically to try to illustrate what we're going to be changing about infestations. I've got 3 plague hearts here near my base. I've got 1 outpost sitting here between my base and some of the plague hearts. And I have 1 infestation right here. And you'll notice that the UI for this infestation is a little different. Eric and Larry, do you want to sort of explain what the player can see here on this infestation?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about it a bit about how clarity of communication is something that's definitely lacking in infestations right now. Like, how do they appear? Why they appear? What happens to them after they're there? And so, yeah, we have some preliminary UI here that's trying to communicate some aspects of infestations that actually already exists, but has never been shown to the player. The idea that infestations have something called severity. Different severity correlates to different amounts of zombies and screamers within the infestation that have to be taken out, and the idea that every infestation has a timer, and when that timer elapses, the infestation has a chance to either spread or grow in severity.
Okay, so
Yeah.
players are already used to the idea that when they encounter an infestation, there will either be 1, 2, or 3 screamers in that infestation. That actually correlates directly to severity. So when we're seeing those 3 pips right there, that means that this is a 3 screamer infestation. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, correct. It's currently not. So one note, currently it doesn't it's not a direct 1-to-1, because if you do kill a screamer, it doesn't lower the severity currently. I mean, that is something we're talking about, but yeah. So it is, but generally that's kind of the connection there. The correlation is that, yeah, the severity is how many screamers, which also just the general number of zombies.
And I should highlight real quick, Eric did point out the fact that, we are still mid-development on this feature. And so we've got, so some of the things we're showing you today are things that, we have got a version of this up and running that is ready for your feedback. There's other parts of this where we know we want to make some improvements here and there, and we haven't made them yet. And partly what we're doing is waiting for your feedback to find out how you're reacting to what we've got so far, and we can make better decisions about this going forward. So these features that we're showing you today, they are partway through development, and they're probably not even going to be in the next update that we issue, the next formal update that we issue. So we're going to be spending some time with you in the public test realm, testing these out and getting your reactions to them. So for right now, though, I've got only the 1 infestation on the map, and it is a 3rd tier infestation. And then this circle around it here, this circle, is this the timer that's leading up to the next time that it's supposed to grow?
Yeah, that's essentially its growth progress, which was something that already existed. We just never messaged that was a thing that's happening. The idea that infestations grew, I think maybe you could intuit if you're really paying attention to one infestation, because on the map, I think you can see how many screamers it has and how many zombies. And so if you paid close attention to one infestation, I think maybe you could intuit that it was growing, but it wasn't clearly communicated. So this is kind of communicating its growth towards the next level. Essentially, so the way it functions is that when it finishes its growth like cycle, it basically decides then if it wants to spread or if it wants to grow to the next severity.
Okay, so
One or
if
the
it's at
other.
level 1 or 2 severity, it could go up a step in severity. But if it's level 3 severity and it finishes that timer, there's only one thing it can do, which is spread.
Yeah, so at that point, it's just gonna spread.
So what does
Essentially, it's
spread
kind
mean
of
exactly?
so basically create another infestation is the goal, to basically spread the territory, the infestation, the blood plagues territory outwards, and take up more territory essentially. So what it actually does is that sends out a horde, an infestation horde, to go target another site, and then when that horde gets there, then it will infest the site, which is what already happens in the game, just again not messaged very clearly.
So I'm going to bring up our super secret, no one's ever seen it before, cheat menu, so that I can turn on one of the new cheats we've added to the game, which is Infestation Speed. I'm going to ramp that up to 100 times. This is not, what we're about to see is not what the game is actually like. This is me cheating to make it happen faster. So let me switch back to this view. So you see, it just filled up the timer. This timer is going to fill up super fast, and it just spawned a horde. And so when I highlight this horde, actually, let me quickly hide you two. And myself. You can see that it tells me how many zombies are in this horde. It's got 1 screamer and 9 zombies. And it says that it's headed to the pump station. Now, that's actually pretty important information because the pump station is my outpost. So do you two want to talk a little bit about what that means? Why is it headed to my outpost?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Larry.
Okay, I mean, yeah, Eric alluded to this earlier, but it was like the threat of infestations hasn't really been felt, even when they take up the entirety of the map. And so how can we make infestations feel like something the player actually wants to and has to address? And here you're seeing an example of that. The infestation horde can actually target your claimed outpost. And once it gets there, I mean, I guess it's a bit of a spoiler, but it can actually take away the benefits that outpost will give you until you clear that infestation.
So
Yeah.
you can see this one is coming in from the east after this outpost, and if I let it get there, I'm going to lose access to water, and like all of the things that I'm using water for are going to dry up until I go and reclaim that outpost by conquering the infestation.
Yeah, you don't actually have to reclaim the output. Like the costs that you sunk into getting up and running are still there. It's just that you will have to clear out the infestation to get access to all your benefits again. So once you clear it out, the outpost will be back up and running. You don't have to reclaim it or anything like that. You don't have to put your influence back into it. But yeah, you can temporarily, while the infestation is there, you can lose access to all the benefits that outpost gives you.
Now,
But this is also part
go
of. Oh, go ahead.
No,
yeah, I
please,
wanted to just like detail out a little bit of like the story that we want to tell with blood plague infestations, where instead of kind of this random nuisance that just pops up, like we want to tell the story of this intelligent evil that is the blood plague and how it kind of knows you're there and targets you, specifically the things that you value. And so your outposts are actually targeted or prioritized by the infestation hordes higher than other empty sites.
That is a really important point to make, because it used to be the infestations, they would pop up in random places in the map, and then they would target random other places to reinfest. So they would just kind of spread organically, but there would be no sense of direct threat from them. But since we've added plague territory, and we wanted to make you feel like you really are contending with the plague hearts directly for control over the map, that means that it makes much more sense for these hordes and these infestations to feel like the enemy reaching out to try to hurt you. This is the offensive side of their defensive war that they've been fighting with us so far.
Yeah, we really want it to feel like a living threat, like it is this living entity, almost like a hive mind kind of thing. And there's, we've had stuff in the game that kind of alluded to it anyways, the way noise kind of affects sieges and the rate at which infestations spread, the idea that your presence, and the more your presence is noticeable, the more it riles up the blood plague. Like that stuff that's kind of been in the game in bits and pieces. We just really wanted to solidify that and make it this a more compelling part of the experience and really integrate it in with everything else. It's funny. I think you noted while playing before, Geoffrey, that there's even VO lines already that alluded to like that. Like they mentioned like that. I think there's a VO line that says like, oh, with all these infestations, there's going to be more sieges. But that's not how the game actually functioned. But it was clear that was kind of that living threat that kind of like that blood plague attacking the player and coming for them was something we've had in our minds for a long time. But now we're actually kind of solidifying that and making that an actual like part of the game, and hopefully a really, really engaging system to kind of play with.
So Alaric in the chat asked a question I think is really, really relevant to what we're seeing here. They asked, these other hordes, we followed that one horde that came from here and marched all the way to the pump station, but the other hordes that are on the map, they want to know, where did those come from? Did they come from another infestation, or did they come from somewhere else?
So as part of our integration effort of infestations to other systems in the game, like we're making infestations clearly come out from plague hearts, and so the first infestations will actually emerge from the plague hearts that exist on the map.
Yeah, so the horde that made this infestation right here, it came from this plague heart, and these two that are sort of marching up the way over here, I'm pretty sure they came from this plague heart over here. And so yeah, so you're gonna see these hordes emerging from plague hearts, coming to infest normal sites outside of plague territory, and like you were saying before, they'll prioritize your outposts and your base as their destinations. So you can see these two here. I should again hide YouTube so I can see. So these two are heading to the the tagged auto workshop and the way station maintenance shed. So yeah, one of them's coming to this workshop, one of them's coming over here to this maintenance shed. So because I've turned up the rate, this is getting kind of out of control. Now, normally this will happen much, much slower. This is happening at 100 times speed. You should have plenty of time to do other things when you're not fighting infestations. But we do have another question. Eddie's Meltdown wants to know, can we intercept a horde before it gets to the destination? If we can tell it's coming to our pump station, can we save our pump station?
Indeed, you can. So, like mentioned before, that infestations were already before they were sending out hordes to go infest new sites. One of the things we've added is when a horde does get sent out to go infest a site, we actually send you a notification, so you can kind of get a heads up that this is about to happen. So that will give the players an opportunity to know that's happening, and then they can look in the map, see that the horde's heading toward their site, and then actually go intercept it, take out the horde before it gets to their outpost. So that's, I mean, part of, integrating everything into the simulation. It's having all these other points of access for influencing the system, for preventing infestations from happening in the first place, and all that stuff. So going in and trying to intercept the horde is totally a valid way to prevent them from spreading, if you don't want to actually address the source problem.
Captain Memer wants to know or Captain Memer probably wants to know what difficulty I'm playing on right now. So this is Nightmare, but I want to just really emphasize that most of the speed you're seeing is the fact that I've turned it up to 100 times speed. This is not actually, I mean, the rate at which new infestations are forming right here is not representative of the actual game. But this is Nightmare in case that ends up being relevant to anything else you want to see. Now, this particular horde, it's getting a little close to me, which means it's actually being simulated by real zombies, which is why you're seeing a little bit more of erratic movement from it right here. But it is actually targeting my base right now. So what happens when a horde like this gets to my base?
So one of the things I mentioned early on when I was talking about infestations being isolated, I also mentioned that sieges are also very isolated from the simulation as well, and that is one of the other changes we're trying to make, is to bring sieges more into the fold here and to tie it into the other systems. And so the way that this works now is, if your base is within range of an infestation and they target you for infesting, essentially, when they get to your base, when the horde gets to your base, it will trigger a siege. So previously, sieges were basically just on a timer. I think it was like a 30-minute to 40-minute timer, and it was just a game of whack-a-mole. It's like, oh, it's time for a siege, it's that time for that chore. So now it is actually the direct effect of a infestation horde reaching your base.
Looks like we actually have 2 infestation hordes that are now coming towards my base. What happened? Could I get 2 sieges rapidly in a row if they both hit?
So currently, no. If a siege is in progress, we don't activate new sieges or anything like that. So it won't. It's basically like they've done their, like, okay, we've got the siege going. They're basically trying to hedge their bets. But yeah, so you'll only have to deal with 1 siege at once at a time. So I think, yeah, I think it currently when once his horde gets there, I think the other horde will just kind of turn into an ambient horde, I think, and they won't actually keep going towards your base because basically like, okay, but the siege has started, we don't need to go call in a siege now. That's not to say that's not something we might change in the future. There's a lot of stuff we're still thinking about and considering, depending on playtest feedback and how, if we find that, it's too easy to prevent sieges, and that we want it to be more of like, okay, there's multiple hordes always kind of coming. You have to deal with multiple. Who knows? That's something we gotta play with and iterate and kind of test to see how this all works. But currently, it's just the one that really will activate it, and then that's it.
All right, so the zombie hordes have reached my base, and so now we're in the middle of a siege, and so we should play this out. But one thing I should point out is the fact that the actual sieges themselves have not really changed at all at this point. Oh my gosh, I'm being screamed at by this disgusting monster. So, like, we've got a lot of ambitions for this feature and how it's going to be developed over time, but we're going to the PTR right now. We're going live to the public test realm without having completed the feature yet. So we've actually got a few areas where we're hoping to make a difference over time, but we haven't quite done it yet. And I think one of those examples is siege difficulty. So how does it work right now in the build that's going to go to the public test realm?
I think it works basically the same way that live game works. Which if you look at the base screen, you can see that threat bar, which is essentially is representative of the noise that your community is making. Yeah, it's gonna be okay. It'll be a little tough right now, but I can explain it.
Here's the threat level.
Yeah, the threat bar. So essentially, that's kind of reflective of how much noise your community is making, and that directly influences the siege intensity currently in the game. That's not to say that we're not considering changing that. That's something we're actually looking at. We're thinking about making it so that kind of infestation presence and severity and number of infestations is actually what affects the overall siege intensity. But that's not what's going into the public test realm currently. That's still something that's a future thing that we're playing with. But yeah, right. The current functionality is basically. It's based on your community noise that determines how hard your siege is going to be.
I think our vision for sieges is that these infestation horde triggered sieges will replace completely the randomly timed sieges. And so since we're putting sieges now in like a completely preventable map strategy game, the intensity of them, we imagine that we're going to be able to get closer to the original vision of sieges, which is like those scenes from all the zombie movies that you're familiar with the hordes banging on the walls and everyone barely makes it out alive.
Yeah, and you can probably remember this a little bit from State of Decay 1 as well. Those of you who played State of Decay 1, you can probably remember that it was hordes converging on your home that would cause a siege experience. Which is, really sort of different from the way State of Decay 2 worked. And now we're kind of getting back closer to that original experience. By the way, I think there's some kind of hidden zombie that's making it impossible for me to clear the siege. So it looks like, we've got a bug. That's the kind of thing you expect, especially when you're going live very early with a feature. And so I thought I'd teleport away and back to see if I could make that get fixed, but apparently no. So I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm just going to complete this mission, complete the siege mission with the cheats. And we'll just say that this siege is done. But yeah, that's, again, that's why we go live in the public test realm. If there's bugs out there to be found, we would love to have your, involvement helping us find them. Because that's, this is a very, these kinds of big systemic changes to the game, they're the kind of thing that it's very difficult to just test locally with a handful of people, because we'll have a limited number of play styles, we'll have a limited range of experience, and be able to go live to thousands of you out there who play this in the public test realm on Steam and can send us feedback. Like, that makes a massive difference to our ability to recognize what a feature like this needs and how we can make it better. So I was going to do something. Oh, right. I think I was going to turn down the infestation speed is no longer going to be at 100. It's going to be back down to 1 again, because I think that I have made this map absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, we got infestations all over the place. We've got infestations up here too, coming from these plague hearts. I'm sure that eventually they're going to target my power station over here. And right now, they completely own my pump station. So maybe while we answer some questions from the chat, maybe I should go and try to clear out my pump station and get that place back. So I'm just switching.
It's cool that you can see the line of infestations from the northern play cards.
I was gonna comment on that. I don't think we directly commented on it, but one of the other changes we're making is the just the behavior of how spreading works. Because currently, basically, it's kind of random which sites they decide to infest.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're changing is that it's going to try to actually spread towards the player space. Like, it's going to be aware of your presence, and it's going to kind of be reaching out as like trying to attack your base.
You're going to see tendrils coming towards you. Holy crap! This place is also a nightmare.
Yeah, and it's more about it's trying to expand its territory and take out nearby threats rather than it just being random like it was previously.
So it's not even like it's spreading out randomly, prioritizing your sites. It actively, even when it's too far away to reach your sites, it's actively trying to move in that direction. Like you should feel like there's an amoeba reaching out to grab you.
Yeah, essentially, or like the front lines of a war. It's pushing the front forwards, essentially.
Yeah.
It's constantly expanding its territory and trying to get closer and closer to you, so it can take out any surrounding threats. It's
Jacob
active and aware.
Jacob Very wants to know, will they attack your friendly enclaves?
Not yet. So no, currently that's just something we're not ready to deal with. That's of course one of the first things that started getting talked about. I would love if we could address that in a future update, but it's one of those things that who knows what the future is going to hold, but I think we're definitely talking about it all the time and thinking about it. Whether or not we'll actually get the chance to do it, that's depends on the schedule and what else comes up, what other priorities we have.
Yeah, it is a little different because we already have a ready-made way to handle a siege at the player's base, and we already have like an obvious consequence for when they arrive at one of your outposts, which is they take it over and you can take it back. Oh, shush. Yeah. But we don't have something like that ready-made for enclaves. So
yeah, there's no such thing as a siege experience in an enclave currently. It would require some whole new system we'd have to come up with and figure out. It would be a pretty large project, I think. So this is why we're not ready to tackle it quite yet. But it would be awesome, and we would love to do that. I mean, I might as well. I want to. A few of these other questions that have popped up. There's a lot of things we're thinking about.
Feel free to field those while I'm just trying desperately not to die.
A few people, it looks like, have brought up the question about, placing mines on outposts, or bringing back the State of Decay 1 kind of defensive options that you had. That is something we are actively discussing, or we're thinking about. Like, we're trying to figure out if it's doable. I mean, because there's a lot of technical considerations to happen there, but it's something we're thinking about. We want to at least give you some methods of actively kind of preventing infestations and sieges and stuff like that, whether it be through outposts or base actions, who knows. It's all still kind of up in the air, but we are actively talking about that stuff, and it is classic State of Decay 1, so bringing that stuff back would be fantastic. I think I would be really excited to see that stuff again.
So I'm trying to throw as much fire as I can at these zombies. Because, unfortunately, I don't know why I decided I was going to play in the Nightmare Zone. Because whenever I'm trying to, kill the zombies that make up the infestation, I end up attracting a bunch of additional zombies to join the infestation.
It's making the infestation worse.
You're helping.
Yeah, I think there might be more zombies here than last time, than before I came. So I'm switching to my suppressed Echo Lab weapon.
You're functionally a screamer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm my own screamer. I don't need screamers.
You're just screaming with guns.
So were there any other questions in the chat that you wanted to follow up on? If you got the Slack thread open, or I can go check that out.
There's a question from Gear Dread whether there's a limit on how many limit or cap on how many outposts can be infested, or can literally everything get infested. Currently everything can get infested, or at least what's within the PTR. So if you don't, keep infestations in check, then you could theoretically lose all your outposts. They don't specifically move towards your outposts. Currently they're focused on getting rid of the players themselves. So they will spread towards the base actively. If outposts are within range and they see them, then they'll go and try to infest them, but they won't be actively moving towards your outposts like across the map.
There is a cap on how many infestations can be on the map at once, though, right? So
yeah, we do have a limit on how many infestations we allow to exist. So there is that, at least.
But once you hit that, you have bigger problems than your outposts, because the behavior is every infestation horde will now become a siege horde coming for your base.
Yeah, that doesn't happen currently. That's something we're thinking about doing for the future. But yeah, I don't think we do it currently. I can't remember what we've actually got checked in at this point.
Oh, and
things are moving so fast.
I've got absolutely no health consumables anywhere in my community, because this is a cheated community that I just put through together for the streams, and so I think I might have to actually cheat myself some consumables in order to keep this character from dying. So let's give them a first aid kit. Let's give him some bottles of painkillers. There we go. That's lovely. Let's see what else is coming in from the chat. Oh, one thing I should point actually is that we've had a few winners, and actually tracking them down here. So we've been doing a giveaway on this stream, and we've had a couple of winners. The first winner was XP Meme on Twitch. The second winner was SwiftRT on YouTube. So both of you, if you have not yet gotten in contact with our moderators via Whisper or whatever methods you have available, please do. We want to give you prizes. Anyway, what other chat questions have you found?
There's another good one from Lyrical Less 05. A question about, so when we kill all the plague hearts, but we still see plague zombies around, should we stop seeing them? I guess that's not about necessarily infestations. That's about plague hearts. Okay, sorry. I was thinking that was going to tie into something more with the infestations, because one thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah, go ahead. I think I know what you're going to mention.
Is the fact that infestations do kind of originate from plague hearts currently. One of the things that is in consideration is what happens then when you clear out all the plague hearts. I think in the PTR, what happens when you clear out all the plague hearts is that it currently falls back to a very small random chance that infestations may pop up. But I think one of the things we're thinking about to kind of thematically make it make more sense is that it'll be a reduced rate, but I think that there'll still be a chance that infestations can spread in from map exits, essentially from neighboring territories kind of thing. So that's not just a mechanic that just disappears from the game.
Yeah.
I love that idea, though, with showing that like an area off the map has a problem that you've already dealt with here, and now it's coming to get you.
Yeah, like you wish your neighbors would do a better job of mowing their lawn.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
Because all their weeds are just spreading over to your area.
There was, I think, a couple questions about whether threat level will influence how many hordes walk to your base. Currently, that's not quite how it works. It's mostly based on how many infestations are within range of your base. So the more infestations you have close to your base, the higher chance that you're gonna get siege hordes sent to you, because they have to kind of be within range to spread to you. But one of the things we are looking at, I think I already mentioned that the threat level will dictate how hard the sieges are going to be. Depending, I think, probably in how, what kind of feedback we get and how easy we find it to be to take out the siege hordes when they're on the way to the base. Like, if it's too easy, we've discussed making it so that depending on your current threat level, they might send out multiple hordes at once, so that you have to deal with more of them. But that's still something that's still up in the air that we gotta play with and iterate on and kind of figure out what actually works the best.
Yeah, I feel like the threat of infestation hordes is really going to come about when like your base gets surrounded by infestation, and they're all sending in like siege hordes nonstop. Like, taking out one horde is not a problem, but when it's just like an incessant stream of them, then I think that's where the challenge is.
Yeah, I think an example Geoffrey had earlier was because he had his base was kind of surrounded by infestations, and he had multiple in-flight siege hordes on the way to his base.
Yeah, like any one of them, it's not a problem. But then at the same time as dealing with that one, the other ones are getting closer and closer.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the screenshots that people post of their map and how completely screwed they are by the number of infestations gathering around their base if they don't pay attention.
Right. Yeah, but the thing is, we want to give players the tools to or the information so that they can nip that in the bud, which is just like where they're coming from, how many of them there are. If you just keep them under control, you just like trim your hedges regularly, then you shouldn't have to deal with a overwhelming number of infestations at any point.
Yeah, I mean, because you have multiple points that you can apply pressure on them. Because you can stop the hordes from reaching their destinations and infesting. You can take out the infestations that are generating the hordes that are being sent out. You can take out the plague hearts that are generating the infestations. So you really have a lot of options for preventing them, and how you decide you want to actually tackle that problem. Which is, I think we already mentioned, is one of the reasons why we're looking at making the actual siege experience a more intense and more engaging thing. Because it is like that last, like, this is a fail case, essentially. If a siege happens, it's because you had all these opportunities to prevent it from happening, and you just failed to do so. So I think, yeah, it should be a more engaging experience, hopefully, and like sieges should be a more obvious consequence for the player failing to act, and it should feel as such.
Yeah, I think right now, like with the randomly timed ambient sieges, the strategy is just don't be home when they happen, and it loses a bit of ammo, and then everyone carries on with their lives. And that's definitely not behavior that we want players to take when a siege occurs. And so we are looking into how to rework that so it makes sense for you to be home when a siege is happening. Otherwise, greater consequences will happen.
Yeah. The player being absent and doing nothing should never feel like the dominant strategy. So we had a question from Captain Memer. He's wondering, is this feature going to play into people's decisions about like what base they want to settle? Like, are more isolated bases going to be safer from this than like say the farmland compound? Or
I was just going to point out that question because that is something that we've recently been talking about, because that is totally the case. Depending on your locality and what other sites are around that are festival, definitely influences how easy it is for your base to be sieged. And I think, Larry, I think that your point of view, I think you were saying that that's kind of a strategy maybe for just choosing bases. So I agree with that. I like that being an aspect of what goes into deciding what base to take. Is how accessible is it to the blood plague is definitely kind of a fun consideration to have on top of all the other things.
Yeah, and it's something that players like already kind of intuit, like when they're sort of making their decisions, especially if they're new to the game and they haven't just gotten completely steeped in how the game works. You hear a lot of players saying, "Oh yeah, I chose this base because it seems safer because it's further away from the urban centers, and it seems like it's not going to get attacked as easily." And and so again, like there were other parts of this that you pointed out earlier that we're kind of leaning into player intuition about how the game should work and trying to make their guesses be true more often than they currently are.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I think that makes sense when you look at how our zombie apocalypse works, that you would expect it to work. And a lot of times, reading, players talking about the game, they'll say this is how it works. Even though we know behind them, like, it doesn't work like that. So like aligning it with those expectations just makes a lot of sense, I think.
By the way, I think we are observing one issue that can make infestations kind of tough, which is I can't find the last zombie in this particular
under the ground
infestation.
again?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to give feedback live on the air, but I'm having some trouble. I think the audience has already picked up on the fact I'm having a little bit of trouble here. Maybe it's this guy. This guy was chasing me out of the building.
Please.
Come on, this guy.
I think that's something we've also talked about, I know internally, is like, how can we help you track down the remaining zombies in the infestation?
Yeah, because when you're securing a building, right, we do sort of tell you where the zombies are if you're just a couple zombies off.
Yep.
But anyway, that's just that's not a promise for the PTR or this feature. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. I am curious if any kind of like base migration strategy is going to take hold once we have infestations up and running, since it like targets your base if it starts getting close. Like, would you ever vacate your base, move to the other edge of the map just to like get away from them, and then they have to like reach from the other side?
That's a really, I hope so. I hope we see players scuttling bases because things just get too bad.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Direct Comedy Gaming wants to know how hard are we anticipating this to be in the lethal zone? Are we expecting this to make the game harder actually on any difficulty, or are we expecting this to? Are we trying to keep the difficulty relatively stable?
I mean, it's gonna be relatively because I don't think we're changing the rate at which they spread anymore. It's and the fact that you can prevent infestations now, because before, I mean, not infestations, sieges,
Sieges, yeah.
because you couldn't prevent them at all before, and so it was just on a timer. So now the fact that you have more agency over kind of mitigating these effects, I don't actually imagine it'll be more difficult. I think it'll be different. Because I mean, there are other things. It's more, intelligent. It's actively coming for you. So there's those kind of considerations. The fact that it'll take out your outposts and whatnot if it finds them. But just that there's so many other opportunities to prevent these things from happening, I think it'll balance out to probably be similar difficulty. We might even find out it's too easy to prevent this stuff. So.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that we're planning on doing. The next stream that we do is probably going to be Joe Swarner coming in and talking about sort of the tactics of the new infestation feature in the public test realm, and sort of talking with folks about what's gotten easier, what's gotten harder, and sort of doing a little bit of back and forth about that. So definitely don't miss our next stream, because we're going to be getting more into the details of what makes this hard, what makes this easy, and how do you play with it.
I think Crimson Exodia has a question that we also have.
Oh yeah. I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to repeat the question.
Yeah,
it's like,
go for it.
How is the Clio device going to work with what we're thinking? And yeah, I mean, it's something we're still trying to figure out as well, actually.
So I think for clarification, this is the Haven device that currently prevents sieges from happening at all at your base.
Yeah. It uses methods currently that were designed for the current, like sort of the older version of sieges, where they're a mission that's on a timer, and it prevents that. I'm not certain if its method of preventing sieges will apply to the new sieges that are triggered by infestations, that are triggered by hordes, or if it won't. And so it's probably going to be a little bit random how it works in the public test round, but we're aware of it, and so we are going to spend some time making sure that it's got a satisfying effect in the new world of sieges, in addition to the old.
Yeah, I think functionally we'd still want it to do the same thing, like in terms of how preventing sieges. We'd still want it. Just how we go about doing that might be different, and that's something we still have to figure out. But I think ideally we'd still have the same effect.
Yeah, we definitely don't want it to your hard-won powers that you got by completing missions in Trumbull Valley. The last thing we want to do is take those from you.
There's a question about how large of an area around your base the siege horde has to reach before it triggers the siege.
It did look like when we were playing that it just has to actually get within your base altogether. Is that how it works right now?
Essentially, it's a little complicated from a player, because we have these volumes that kind of designate what your base is, and essentially it's when the horde gets within that volume. But that's not clearly communicated to the player, like, because you can't see the edge of that volume on the map. So one of the things we're discussing is having it just be within, if they get within the safe zone of your base, because that is something you can clearly see on the map, and that's the clearest indication of territory.
Sorry, I'm trying not to detract from what you're saying.
No. Yeah, so that's something we're we're in the middle of considering, is like how we want to handle that, to make it clearer to the player when, where is that line. And so I think the safe zone's currently what we're thinking of doing, because that's just very clear to the player. You can see it on the map, and then it would be very obvious when it would trigger. But yeah, currently it's basically when they get within your base, which is usually around like when they get within the walls. I think depending on the base, that might be, some of them it's a little bit outside of the walls. So it's a little inconsistent right now.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And so yeah, I think yeah, you like getting within the walls in the current version and in the PTR is going to make sense. And I think the safe zone, because you're tracking these on the map, I think the safe zone makes even more sense. And so yeah, so feels like we're headed in a good direction. But a lot of what we do and a lot of what works here is really going to, like I said, depend on the feedback that we get from you folks when you play this in the PTR, which, by the way, it's not live right now as we're recording this, but it should be pretty soon. So pay attention to Steam and watch for announcements on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all these places. We're going to let you know when the PTR goes live, so you can get in there and start giving us some feedback.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to feedback about like the pacing of infestation ramping as a whole, just because like we already know there's like a ton of information we give players at the very beginning of a playthrough. We don't want to just like load more on top of that. So we're aiming to kind of have it be this mid-game ramping threat that players have to start caring about once they have kind of settled into this survivable base, have a good number of community members and resources. So yeah, like have we done that well, or is it kind of overburdening players too early?
Yeah, and just the general feel. I mean, with the system like this, one of the things that's hard with developing and testing is that it is a long burn. Like it's a slow burn kind of experience, and it's not like something that happens within the span of a couple minutes. It's happens over the course of hours probably. So it takes a while to really get the feel of how the spreading works and how how often you're getting sieged and how the experience of playing with this active blood plague threat actually feels over a long period of time. It's a lot harder for us to test that rapidly. So getting just as much feedback from as many people as possible it'll help a lot, I think. And it's part of the reason why we want to get this out as early as possible. It's just so we can start getting just more feedback about how it feels over the long haul. Because like I said, it's hard for us to when it takes hours to get to really get a feel for experience, and we're doing a lot of we're doing lots of iteration, a lot of changes, and having to do that constantly it's a lot tougher for us because we're a small team. So much help and much feedback as possible is great.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've seen us in the past. A lot of the features we sent to the public test realm, we were using sort of our older standard of like when something is ready, which is it's practically ready to ship, and we just need to find out get a head start on the first bugs we're going to run into after it goes live. And that was kind of the timing we had before, but this time we're going in much earlier. Like I said at the very beginning of the stream, you should not expect that this completed feature will go into the live game even in the next update. It might be a couple of updates from now, so we're letting you in really early to help us with this, because this is the kind of feature that that we only know if it works after we've seen a lot of people play it for a long period of time. Scott Lannon's got a question, possibly based on seeing a few things on my screen here. How will this change affect performance, if at all, particularly on the map with all the different infestation splotches and things like that?
It shouldn't really. I mean, because honestly, the cap in terms of infestations, that's actually hasn't changed yet, really. Like I think currently there's a cap of 25 in the live build, and it's still the same for us. It's just the behavior of how they spread is going to be different. And the infestations just existing elsewhere in the world don't really have an impact on the moment-to-moment performance because they're kind of virtual at that point. They're not all those zombies are spawned if you're not near them. So it shouldn't really have much of an impact at all because it's mostly changes in behavior rather than scale.
Yeah, I know the minimum distance safeguard for like distance between infestations is still in place too, so that you don't have like a whole bunch of them clustered together that form zombies when you get too close.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, part of it being more of an active living threat, it wants to spread out and cover as much territory as possible. So clustering up doesn't make sense thematically for it. It wants to cover as much territory. So having the infestations be spread out a little bit more, I think it makes sense there, and it's also going to help keep performance good because you're not going to have 5 active infestations with actively spawned zombies around you because they're just not going to be that close to each other.
So I should break in real quick and announce sort of, we've done finally all 4 of our giveaways that we did have actually completed. We've got winners for all of them. So to repeat the first few, XP Meme, was our first winner. Swift RT was our second winner. For the first time, I'm announcing Zed Soda was our third winner. We love Zed Soda. He posts a lot of like fan art and stuff like that online. He's a pretty cool dude. And then number 4, our fourth winner is Wide World of Stank Boy. So congratulations, Wide World of Stank Boy. I hope all of you have managed to get in contact with our moderators so that you can actually get the lovely placemats and coasters that we've been offering. And if you haven't, please do, because we want to give these things away. We don't want to be stuck with no one to send them to. So please do that. Oh man, a wandering trader. Oh wait, no, we've only got a few minutes left. I don't have time to go make some sweet, sweet profits. So yeah, we are getting towards the end. So you two have any like final comments or like favorite bits of developing this, or like final questions you have for the audience, things you hope are going to get answered in the public test realm?
I mean, play it and just kind of getting feedback and just how does it feel? Does it feel like an active threat that's coming for you? Does it feel like you have, the tools that you need to really respond to it? There's a lot of, because that's the other problem with a simulation systems driven game. There's a lot of variables at play, and so there's a lot of tuning and balancing that needs to happen. So knowing where are the sticking points, and where things may be too easy or too hard, or too frequent or stuff like that, getting feedback and all that stuff is great, just because there's a lot going on with these kinds of systems. So having kind of the general pulse of how things feel over a long period of time is great. Yeah, I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, for me, I think I just want to mention that, I don't know, like since joining SVD2 team a year ago, it's been really enjoyable to kind of come into a game that has so many deep systems and have my job be to kind of like put them in the player purview, like to let people see them and kind of expose all this great work that has already been done before I got here. And so this is like a good example of that, because like Infestations is a deep system within the game that we just like players don't really know how it works, and so being able to kind of bring that into the fold and create an enjoyable experience from that, it's like there's already so much there to work off of.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of, I think, the main motivations that kind of kick this stuff off, is acknowledging that we have these systems that had so much work put into them, but didn't quite have the impact that was proportional to that work. So now, like, we have these things already in place. They're just not quite hooked up correctly to get the impact we'd want for how much we put into them. So having the opportunity to finally fully realizing these systems and make it, behave like how we kind of always wanted them to, just never had the time, is fantastic. I love that we have the opportunity to do these things now.
Yeah, well, I'm really thrilled for all the work that you and your team have put into this, Eric. So thank you so much for coming on and giving the audience a tour of of what's going on. Do you have any like last words or final goodbyes?
Just thanks for having me. This is great to do. It's always fun.
And Larry, we should also say goodbye to you. Thanks for all the work you put into sort of working out how these new versions of these systems should fit together. And I'm excited to see what the audience thinks in the public test realm.
Oh, same. Yeah, can't wait. Thanks for having me on the stream.
So as we are getting out of here, I should point out that actually a couple of our contest winners did not actually get back to us. And so unfortunately, Worldwide Stank Boy didn't get the prize. Neither did Swift RT. And so we've got some new winners. Enigma and Lone Keat are now our winners of those placemats. So please get to our moderators as fast as you can. We're wrapping up this stream, but they're going to be listening for you to whisper at them, and would love to give you those prizes. Anyway, the stream's over, so let's get out of here. So like I said earlier on, next time Joe Swarner is going to be diving into this after the public test realm has been live for a little while. So he'll have heard a lot of your feedback already. He'll have his own feedback from playing in the public test realm, and we'll talk about tactics. It'll be fun. So with that, let's get out of here. In 20 seconds, after mumbling weirdly, I think I heard my door rattle. My son might have just gotten home from school. Sometimes it feels like zombies are coming after me when my son gets home from school.
Siege.
Just scratches the door. Doesn't